everyone, welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago. This week we're looking back at the hot comics from November 10th, 2023, and I'm recording this on May 8th, 2024. As always, you get those dates so you know when this information is relevant because the market is always moving and changing. And as always, we're looking back at the Comic Tom Key Collector Hottest Trending Comics of the Week and the CBSI Hot Top 10. Those are the two lists we've been using for this now for 5+ years. So what are we doing here is we look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago, see how they're doing in the market now, see what factors made them hot, what factors have affected them since, and how they performed. Would you have been better off being patient? Would you have been better off chasing those books? And each week we look at those two lists of 10. We come up with our books to kind of judge what's going on. So this week we got a total of 15 books. You will notice as we get into the video that I did not make predictions back then. This was the week I had COVID. So we were not up to it. So there were no predictions back then. So we're just looking at the straight results of how they performed in the market. So let's dig in and see what we can learn this week. First up, we have The Legend of Zelda, #1 from 1990. This was hitting the list because live action movie rumors. Basically, there were people that were saying this was going to be the next project, but they were going live action. And so this is what people were chasing. Back then, raw copies were going for $2 to $250. 9.8 hit $1,200. Now it's a $50 to $385 book. That $385 is a bit of an outlier, but there are several sales in the 200s for higher grade copies for sure. 9.8, $820 to $1,500 on a 9.8. The most recent sales have been $8 to $1,000-ish, but there was a $1,500 sale and another sale above that $1,200 mark. So we're going to kind of call this steady, and I'll be back. You can definitely get more opportunities to get deals than you would have gotten profits if you bought in back then. But there have been a few sales on both the raw and the slab side that were higher than what it was back then. So we're going to still call it kind of steady. I'll be back. You can find deals if you were patient here. Next, we have Birds of Prey, #3, the Otto Schmidt 1 in 25. I know this is the bubblegum cover. This is the next issue. He made another 1 in 25. People were another Black Canary cover, and people were chasing this one too, hoping it would be the bubblegum cover. $40 to $50 for this one right out of the gate, which isn't a great sign for 1 in 25. That's really not enough to usually sustain it. Although this one's done okay. It's now a $25 to $50 book. And most of the sales are still in the $40-ish to $45 range, with just a few sales all the way down to like $20 and $35 and $30. But most of the sales are still $40 to $50. So we're going to call this one also steady, and I'll be back. Opportunities for deals, but it's for the most part in that same range. Next, we have Ghost Rider #17, the Bjorn Barron's regular variant. This is on the list for the second week in a row. Last week we talked about it was hitting around 50. This week it was 50 to 65. Now it's 20 to 50, with most of the sales, 20, 30 to 40, kind of 20 to 40, then pushing all the way up to that 50. 9.8 only cost you 50 to 100. So overall, we're going to call this one a trap. Last week we called it an I'll be back. At this point, if you were paying 60, 65, it's definitely a trap in terms of this particular variant. But still, fantastic performance for just a regular variant. The book is it's really valuable for a regular variant, just not the immediate interest value that we had back then. All right, next we have X-Force #46, the Jeff DeCall 1 in 25. Back then it was going for 40 to 50. Just like we talked about Birds of Prey, usually not a good sign. And this one performed more typically. It is a $25 to $35 book now, so basically ratio to slightly above. When it doesn't quite get above double ratio, that's pretty typical. So this one's a trap. Still a cover I like. This might be a time to go get it if it's going for these rates. We'll have to see. All right, with that, that's all the covers. So we only had 3 covers this week. We're moving into some comic buzz. And this one is kind of a comic buzz / cover, this first one. It is X-Men #27, the Peach Momoko variant of Maystorm. Maelstrom didn't appear in this book, but she was on this variant and basically kind of set up this Ultimate X-Men series that she was going to appear in. So that's why people were chasing it back then. Back then it was a $20 book raw. Now it's a $30 to $50 book raw. Now that the series is coming out, $115 to $150 for a 9.8. So overall, it's up in a street cash for this particular book. Be interesting to see once we move away from the initiation of this series how well Maelstrom continues to do. I would guess that it probably steps back now from here, but at this point, if you bought in initially, you definitely have the opportunity to make some money if you were willing to sell. Next, we have Astonishing X-Men number 4, the first appearance of Armor. Also a big part of this Ultimate X-Men run, and that was the reason this was hitting the list, because people found out about that. Back then, both the regular cover and the 1 in 10 with Colossus, the one I'm showing is the regular, we're going for basically 15 to 25. 9.8 of the regular went for 65. Now it's a $5 to $25 book. So 9.8, there's been only 2 sales, both of the regular cover, 175 and 245. So 9.8s are way up. But the raw copies are basically in the same range, even with a few bargains in there. So we're going to put this steady and worth it. I will say there's 1 in 10s with Colossus, still basically 10 to 25. So basically in that same range also. All right, next we have Transformers number 1, the start of this Energon universe, the first Transformers book in that universe. Back then it was going for $5, 9.875, just lots of sales as people were getting interested in the fall. Now it's a $10 to $25 book, 9.870 to 90. So 9.8s really haven't went up, but definitely the raw copies have here. So we'll call this another up in straight cash, yeah, because you could definitely make a little bit of money off those raw copies. People are still super excited about this new Energon universe, both the Transformers and the G.I. Joe side. Sounds like it's been a really good read. I am happy for the fans of this series. I haven't been reading it, but I am happy that people that are fans of this are getting something they really enjoy. So next, we have Amazing Spider-Man number 4, the first appearance of Silk. This hit the list for a multitude of reasons over the years. This particular reason had to do with the game. I haven't played the new Spider-Man game, but apparently there's at least some sort of appearance here later in the game. That was causing it to hit the list again, but still way down from previous peaks. Raw copies were going for around 100. 9.8 was only going for just under, one went for 194, so it actually dropped under 200, which is the first time in a long time it had done that. So I don't know how hot it really was, but yeah. And now it's even worse. It's a $50 to $110 book raw. 9.8 to 150 to 180. So it's a down and I'll be back. Borderline trap at this point, even from 6 months ago. And this is still way down from where Silk has been. So yeah, if Silk's been a character you've been interested in, you didn't want to pay the prices she's been going for the last 4 or 5 years, we are about as low as she has been right now in terms of if you want to invest in, if you think there's still long-term potential for this character, this is a good time to do it. Next, we're going to move into MCU. So MCU was the rest of this list, although only 15 books. So we're through 8, so 7 books on MCU side. First up, we got Prelude to Deadpool Corpse, number 3, the first appearance of Dogpool. We got confirmation he was going to be in the movie. Raw copies were going for $25 to $30 back then. We just recently saw Dogpool in the trailer, and yet it's now a $10 to $30 book. So it's actually in the same range, slightly down, with most of the sales under that $25 mark that was going back then. Most of the sales are like 10 to 20. There is only one recent 9.8 sale. It went for $300, which is really high for given the raw values, but there doesn't appear to be a lot of 9.8s out there, so that kind of, the rarity kind of drives that value a little bit. But it's one sale, so hard to really judge there. Overall, we're still going to say a little bit of a down, and I'll be back. You've been better off just being patient, even with the movie about to come out, even with him appearing in a trailer. Next, we have Timeless number 1, the first appearance of Miss Minutes. Sort of, this is her first appearance on a cover. She's not actually in this book, but she was on this cover, and people went crazy for this back in the day when it came out right after the first season of Loki. Now, back then, with the second season Loki coming out, it was back on people's radars. It was going for 15, 9.8 going for 100, both of which were way cheaper than what this book was going for initially. I think it got up to like a 300 plus on a 9.8 at this at one point. Now it's a $60 to $100 book for a 9.8, 5 to 30 for the raw. So the raw copies are basically in the same range. A little bit of a step back on a 9.8. So we'll call this steady and I'll be back because most of the sales are raw. But yeah, and that 15 is basically right in the center, right on the average still. All right, next we have Daredevil number 9, first appearance of Echo. This was hitting the list because the trailer dropped for the Echo show. Back then, $60 to $100 for raw copies, $2 to $250 for a 9.8. Also still way down from previous heights on Echo, but back up because the show was about to come out. Now it's a $35 to $70 book for a raw copy, 9.8, $130 to $200. So this is definitely a trap since the show. And unlike the Silk, I think this might not yet be to the floor, that you might still be able to find a deal, but if you were patient on this one. But yeah, this book has definitely come crashing back down. Next, we have Daredevil number 10, first cover appearance of Echo, second appearance overall. Back then, 25, 9.8 going for 130. Now it's a $10 to $30 book, 9.8, 80 to 100. Another trap. And yeah, we're getting pretty cheap on Echo. So if you like the character, you want the books, now's a much better time to buy in than previously. Since we've had any rumors of her appearing, for sure. Next, we have Silver Surfer number 53, the first appearance of Dar-Ben. She was, if you don't remember, it was a character who appeared in this book. They gender swapped to use Dar-Ben as the villain for the Marvels movie. She was pretty one-note and not super memorable in the movie. Although I think the movie was underrated because I think it was a lot of fun otherwise. But anyway, back then, $15, 9.8, 150. Now it's a $2 to $7 book with most of the sales like 5 or under. No graded sales really recently. Yeah, this is a dumpster fire. There was no reason to chase Dar-Ben at all. Next, we have Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 16, the first appearance of Monica Rambeau, obviously related to the Marvels movie getting ready to come out, or had just come out at this point. Raw copies back then. This is one of those that was a Tom List thing, and I didn't get a chance to check their average. They said an average of 125. I think that was probably high, but since I didn't do a cash or trash, I couldn't check it. 9.8, 450. Now it's a $10 to $40 book, 9.8, 3 to 425. So we're still going to call this a trap just based on the 9.8 values, which I can confirm. Yeah, this was once pushing $1,000 for 9.8. I think like my 9.4 was pushing like 300 back then. So yeah, this is a book that's come crashing back down. Still a character I like. I don't know how much they're going to use her though going forward. It'll be interesting to see. Next, we have Uncanny X-Men number 164, the first appearance of Carol Danvers as Binary. Raw copies on this were 25, 45 back then, 9.8 up to 200 based on speculation. Binary would appear, and we sort of got Binary. If you stayed around for at one point, Carol actually kind of looks like Binary, and then at another point, we see another character in the Binary costume if you stayed for post-credits. But yeah, anyway, that was Cosmos book to the list. Now it's a $10 to $40 book, 9.8, 135 to 175. So yeah, a big old trap on this particular book. So yeah, that's this week's list. Had a couple up books, a few steady books, but mostly down again. I want to thank you guys for watching, and we will catch you next time. Later.